What's up everyone, and welcome to today's video where I'm doing a live Google Ads audit of a really successful e-commerce brand, GLD. And in today's video, I will go over all kinds of ads that they are running. I will briefly go through their store. I will show you what they're doing. I will show you the performance, at least based on some tools that we can sort of estimate this with. Very, very quickly and importantly up front, a disclaimer that all of this is based on publicly available info, right? I'm not associated with them. I have never talked to them. This is, of course, no insider info. I would never go ahead and share any info publicly from a client that we're working with. So all of that can be accessed publicly relatively easily. And with that being said, let's get started right away. We have a whole bunch of things to cover, from their overall strategy, shopping, search, brand. Of course, I tried my best to get a somewhat accurate picture. It's not possible because you cannot trigger every single ad that they're running. Sometimes you simply won't get it, and then the entire display and YouTube site, etc., is even more difficult to do. But as I said, let's get into this whole thing right away. So first things first, what is it that they are doing? They are selling like iced out, hip hop jewelry, chains, Cuban links, right? We have a client in the same space. That's why they immediately came to mind. Our client is considerably smaller than they are. They're still a successful, multi-seven-figure business, but GLD is a very big player in the space and they're doing a great job, right? And when you look at SimilarWeb, which is like the first destination that you can sort of look at, I'm not a huge fan of it because we have a bunch of clients that are very large, multi-eight-figure businesses. And when I check them on SimilarWeb, I very often notice that the numbers are totally off, right? Not a different order of magnitude, but like 20-30% off, sometimes more. So when we look at their site, just to get a rough idea of what they're doing, right? SimilarWeb tells us that GLD is getting around 1.5 million visits per month, or at least last month. And out of that, round about 30% is paid. So paid channels are definitely very important to them. But they're also doing a great job of, getting direct traffic. In other words, people that enter the URL, have them bookmarked, etc. They're also getting a bunch of organics. They are getting quite a bit of social traffic. Email, that's typically flawed. I don't think that they actually get 0.03%. It's usually an issue with SimilarWeb, but that is like the very top level of the order of magnitude of the size of this business. They are surely making tens of millions US dollars in revenue per year. That's pretty much guaranteed, right? So with that said, let's look into, first of all, the overall strategy in a quick summary. So they're super successful on socials with like 1.5 million IG followers, right? Really good stuff. They rely heavily on discounts and unique offers like buy one, get one free, build a set, 40% off, etc. We will talk a lot more about this in that video right here. As you can see here, those are some of their shopping listings. Also, if you look at the Meta ad library, they have a lot of these ads running at the moment with like get a free packet, get a free chain, and so on and so forth. Really good stuff. And their pricing is sort of on the average side of things, right? There are more expensive brands, there are less expensive brands. The client that we work with is roughly in the same price range as well. So now when we look at their shopping, I gave it a rating of like 8.5 out of 10 points, right? And now we'll go through and I will tell you why. Generally, they have a very well optimized product feed with well-optimized titles that sometimes could be a little bit longer though, right? So here, for example, GLD 14K white gold diamond prong Cuban necklace, GLD Miami Cuban link chain for men and women, generally good stuff, right? I found a whole bunch of products though where you could probably add more relevant keywords into this. And one common theme throughout this video will be that I assume, based on the size of this brand, they probably tested all kinds of things already. So if I say something now, take this with a grain of salt, because maybe they've actually tested it and came to the conclusion that this is not the best thing to do, right? But from a pure outsider perspective, looking at it, this is sort of what I can say about it right now, sort of status quo kind of thing. Some titles, though, are a bit short or basic. So here, for example, GLD Signature Cuban 12mm size, right? You could technically talk a bit more about the materials. You could technically, if it's a pure Cuban for men, even though most of them are really, right? But you could mention that as well. There are certainly some more relevant keywords that you can put into this whole thing. So not terrible at all, but there are some titles where I believe they could be improved further, okay? What they're doing really, really well is the whole discount and promotion situation, right? They're actively using discounts with appropriate banners. So here, for example, 40% off with the code HEAT. And if you apply this at checkout, you will get those 40% off. Now, one thing that for some reason didn't work, maybe it's because of a VPN sort of issue, right? Because I'm in Germany. Most of the ads that they run are towards the US. Normally, you get the discount applied, or you can get the discount applied on the product page already, right? You do not necessarily always have to wait until you get into the checkout. There are two ways that you can set it up. You can have auto discounts, auto promotions, where you land on the site and you get the price that is being advertised, in this case, the $120, or you get those $120 once you are in the checkout applying this code HEAT. And the code HEAT should be pre-populated. So when you go to Shopify, they run on Shopify, right? The code HEAT will be stored in your URL or in the cookie, in the UTM. And once you land in the checkout, it should be applied automatically, because of course Google wants you to pay the price that you see here. If you see $120 but you see 200 in the checkout, that's not what Google wants at all. They want this 100% congruency, of course. But they're doing a great job with the whole promotion thing. They have these overlays of 40% off that I showed you before, and so on and so forth. So that's great. Also, they're using additional images for virtually all products that I've seen. Bunch of additional images that you can go through. Now, I have to say that the average shopper on Google Shopping will just click through to the product, right? There is no way to measure it 100% accurately, of course, but from what I learned over the years is people don't really spend much time reading descriptions on shopping. People don't spend too much time browsing through the images, but it is definitely great to have them. So it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Having more images is rarely a bad thing, and they are using this very extensively, and that's great. Now, what they should consider, it's not a warning sign, it's in the middle, is trying some neutral background variations as well. And as I said, this is something that likely has been tested before. So what they're doing mostly, and I like this, and I think it's probably the more effective variation, is they show the necklaces, the chains, and everything on an actual person, on an actual model, right? Usually with a black shirt, so that there's a lot of contrast going on, which is exactly how you should do it, which is what we're doing with our client in that space as well, right? But you see a lot of brands that use gray background, white background, black background, plain, without a model. And I would definitely recommend testing it if it hasn't been tested before, right? Because usually the philosophy that I follow is try to be different. So it's not that white background always performs best, or that something like an ambient background always performs best. Usually the thing that performs best is, of course, the shot that is very high quality, the shot that somewhat stands out. So if everyone is white background and you have an actual model, you're generally drawing attention towards your listing, and vice versa. So that is something that is definitely worth trying, right? And that will probably, if they've tried it, fair, but it's something that I would consider. Now, one thing that I would change though, or that I would consider to change though, is that they're leading with their brand name first on non-brand search queries as well. Okay, so what do I mean with that? Well, if you search for iced Cuban link chain, or iced Cuban chain, as I've been doing here, I'm still getting all the results that start with like GLD, GLD, GLD. Now, of course, they are a very successful brand and their name is very short. So it's not that this takes a lot of space. It's not that this is a critical error or anything like that. And maybe they do it on purpose because they say, hey, to us, branding is most important. If you are a small to medium-sized brand, typically you don't want to do that. You want to put the most important keywords like 14K, white gold, diamond, prong, Cuban, or everything else at the front, and then you want to end with your brand name. But of course, at a certain level, where you think that the average person searching for iced Cuban chains, there is a fair chance that they know about your brand, then you might want to place it first. But what we like to do with brands that are bigger and more sophisticated is we use a 2-feed approach, where we have like a brand feed and a non-brand feed. And then we have multiple shopping campaigns, a brand shopping and a non-brand shopping. And we can very precisely use the right product feed for each person. So if you go with iced Cuban chain, we have a different product title and listing than if you go with GLD chains, or GLD shop, or buy GLD jewelry, and so on and so forth. And this is extremely effective. Of course, it's not worth it if you spend like 20K a month, but these guys are surely spending multi-6 figures a month, possibly even 7 figures a month. I don't know, but definitely multiple 6. At least I'm very, very confident that they are on just Google, right? So in that case, it may very well be worth it, at least worth trying. And then we have some negative keyword issues that are not 100% on point. So when I search, for example, for a GLD Cuban chain silver, as I'm doing right here, basically I'm still getting all their like white gold results, etc. Now I know that they look pretty similar, right? So there might be intention. Again, our client in that exact space, we have some of those too. We have tested this a lot, and there were many cases where silver just didn't perform. And then there were other like more nuanced tests with very specific sets of products where silver did perform. So same thing that I repeated a bunch of times now. There might be some cases where, for example, this product here, performed very well, like the white Cuban link necklace, when someone searches for silver, even though technically it's not actual silver material, but because it looks similar and because maybe people will be fine with that too, and the ROAS of silver-related queries was on point, was good enough. Normally, though, what I see is it only works with specific product sets, right? So certain keywords that technically are not the ones that you want to target perform with product category A, but not with product category B, or it only works with the best performers, or it only works with products that are at a sale, because people are like, I wanted silver, but now this product that's on a great sale, like virtually all of theirs, and then it works. So there are a lot of nuances to it, but I just wanted to make sure that I point this out because, of course, normally it's something that you would do. And with that, we're already done with the shopping part and about to go with the search. Now, at this point in the video already, if you like this and if you want me to do this for more brands, because I definitely plan to do so, then let me know in the comments. Subscribe to this channel, of course, to not miss out on anything. And let me know in the comments which brand you would like to get audited. This is just the first, and there will be many more, and likely many of the others will be more sophisticated. We will go through more points, right? I will do more of a screen share as well. So if you have a brand, whether it's large or small, but of course it should have a somewhat decent size. It doesn't have to be 8 or 9 figures, but at least where we can look at a bunch of ads to get a bunch of inspiration from. Let me know in the comments. So with that said, let's look into search. And here I would give a rating of 7.5 out of 10. First of all, they're using competitor bidding as well, and they do it well. So I search for Jackson Alternative, which is a competitor in that space, right? And I get #1 in gold jewelry, get 40% off, etc. So not only are they bidding on their competitors, but they're also doing it with a strategic sort of ad copy, right? Like they reinforce, hey, you're searching for Jackson, but we are the #1 in gold jewelry. That's great. That's exactly what we're doing as well with our clients, right? When we use competitor search campaigns, make sure that your ad copy is tailored towards targeting a competitor. If they start with, we are GLD, great, awesome Cuban links or something. That was very bad ad copy now, of course, but that is less effective than if you actually know, hey, wait a second, this person is actually looking for our competitor. So let's phrase our ad copy in a way that actually creates an interruption. Like, I'm looking for Jackson. Oh, but these guys are the #1. That's very good. Then they make very effective use of ad assets. So in all my checks, whether it's on the ad library, the ad transparency center, whether it's on manual checks, VPN, I did a whole bunch of things here. Their assets have been very effective, right? They use the link, they use the site links, they use the callouts, of course. They use the promotion, summer sale, 40% off, along with the code. Now, one more thing, I found promotions to be even more effective if you give them an actual start and end date. Right? So if you have a revolving promotion that just goes on and on, might not be that great if you put an end date here and you change it all the time. But if, let's say, these guys know that the heat promotion will be until, I don't know, mid-August or something like that, it usually is a very good move to actually put the date here. That creates even more urgency and just creates a whole bunch of benefits. So that's a little extra, but I really like how they use the assets. However, they do not have super tailored ad copy and landing pages for quite a few of the cold search queries that I've been using, right? So here I've been looking for Cuban link chain, and they just lead with the GLD shop, complete your fit, explore modern unique designs, etc., and they send me to the homepage rather than, for example, their best performing Cuban link or a specific bundle or something. Again, talking from experience, with our Iced Jewelry client, right? That we've been working with for years, by the way. It's one of our older/oldest clients, so I know the space fairly well. We have tried it all, right? We have tried sending people with Cuban links to the homepage, to chains, to our bestseller, etc. For a very long period, our absolute bestseller Cuban link performed the best. We had like a bundle with multiple products in there, and this was our leading entry offer for people with a cold search query like Cuban links. And this performed by far the best, followed by the collection page, followed by the homepage. Maybe they have done the excessive testing and came to the conclusion, hey, we're so well known and everything, and our homepage is great, that this is why they're doing it. But from an outside perspective, it doesn't seem super tailored. And even if even if the landing page, the homepage, is chosen deliberately, I still recommend to further fine-tune the ad copy, because Cuban link chain, of course, is an absolute tier 1 keyword for these guys. Yet the headline, and maybe that's because of a responsive search ad and I was just unlucky to get like a bad headline, even though of course it's technically not bad, but that this isn't, both the headline and the description are not perfectly targeted towards, Cuban links specifically, squeezing out more performance out of the whole thing. Then I found more like an error, or more like an issue with possibly outdated ad copy. So there were a bunch of cases where I was getting the GLD shop get 50% off for July 4th. And then I checked with the Ads Transparency Center, and I realized that at least yesterday, those were still around. So I assume that's now over. Again, there are sometimes cases where you have something that's technically outdated, but if you check the performance, it's still performing great. So you have to kind of think, well, all right, do we want to pause something that performs well because technically it's not relevant anymore? Usually what we say is yes, we should, because it's still weird, right? Even if it's slightly outperforming something else, we don't want to show something that's technically not in effect anymore. So I usually say, you know what, even though it performs, of course, if it performs 10 times better than the rest, that's a different story, but normally it doesn't. So in this case, we are normally not doing it that way. And that's just something that's worth pointing out, of course. Same with leading with brand headline extremely often, even on cold query. So just as I said, regardless of whether you search for Cuban link or, Miami, iced out chain, prong chain, you name it, the iced watches and so on and so forth, they were almost always leading with like the GLD shop. And sometimes it was the only headline. Sometimes it was the one of the two. Maybe they have pinned all of their GLD shop headlines. That's also possible, even though sometimes you also don't get them. But this is something that if it isn't deliberate, I would certainly test, right? Because yes, again, their shop is super famous and everything, so maybe it's intentional, but usually you probably see better results with a first headline that actually speaks towards the category / the product that the person is searching for, right? So if everything starts with GLD, 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 especially if it's literally just one headline, right, which in many cases was the case, then it's probably worth thinking about a more cold traffic focused, non-brand first headline approach. And this is something that I would at least recommend to try out. By the way, many of these things are probably just part of a PMAX campaign or something, right? So of course you cannot just tell from a first search whether something is from PMAX or search or standard shopping. So that's something like that as well. But of course, if you run all of those in the PMAX, then you should still make sure that you control headlines in a way that you won't get the exact same thing all the time. And if that is something that you need help with as someone watching this video, by the way, make sure to check the link in the description where you see the link to an Ignite roadmap where I do exactly what I'm doing here, just way more in depth and completely tailored towards your brand, and a Loom video that I give to you, again, way more specific and strategic about what you should do rather than just auditing what's there. You can request that for free if you are a business that meets certain criteria. It takes you 30 seconds to go through the thing, so make sure to check the link right now. Typically doing this for brands with more than $1 million per year in revenue, but check for yourself and see. It just takes, as I said, less than a minute. So let's continue with brand. And as you might guess, here they are doing very well. I gave them a 9 out of 10. They're actively defending, yeah, that was an error from my side. So actively defending brand with a good ad, right? You put in GLD, GLD shop, any variation, they're always up there. They're always the number one, as it should be, of course. They have good site links, in my opinion. They use everything that you should, right? So great presence. At that level though, the brand campaign could be a bit more nuanced. So when I type in GLD shop chains, again, same thing, GLD shop items on sale, enjoy free shipping, at their ad spend, at their prominence, at their volume, I would subdivide it further. So when I look across our biggest clients, like 6-figure monthly spenders, etc., we normally have a nuanced brand search campaign, right? So as an example, one of our clients that was selling for a very long time, like eyeglasses, sunglasses, contact lenses, so anything in the eyewear category. And because of their size, we were spending like $350K per month or something on Google, right? We wanted to make sure that instead of just saying their name, that I don't mention here right now, we were actually their name plus 30-day lenses, their name plus 90-day lenses, their name plus 7-day lenses, and so on and so forth. Like literally perfecting the ad landing page gap, because at that level it's worth it, right? If you spend enough on brand, if you make enough from brand, then it's worth squeezing every little percentage point out of it. If you spend $3,000 a month and your brand doesn't get thousands or tens of thousands of searches per month anyway, just treat it all the same. Have one brand campaign, one brand ad group, that's it, that's fine. But the moment it gets bigger and you have so much volume from brand, it can be useful to get this even more nuanced, because this might be the difference between a brand ROAS of 20 and 27, right? Or 40 and 48. So brand is always ultra profitable, of course, but everything, of course, matters, especially at that ad spend level. So it's just something that I recommend. And that's it already about brand, because it's pretty straightforward. Most of the things that I saw were great. I mean, they're heavily into branding. They lead with their brand name on pretty much everything, whether it's shopping, search, and so on and so forth. So that's why I give it at least a 9, maybe even a 9.5. But that's the one thing that I would probably do differently. So those were the main points about the actual ads. As I said, in the next video that I'm making for the next brand, I will try to be even more nuanced here, but I still have 2 more points, which is funnel steps and final notes. So the funnel steps, this is what their funnel on a very, very, very high level, very simplified looks like. They have top of funnel, which is broad keywords, hip-hop jewelry, chains, jewelry for men, right? As well as celebrity videos that I didn't even show you, but I didn't want to make this video too long and it doesn't really help much in the context here. For example, they have a Wiz Khalifa video talking about the brand with one of their necklaces on, right? Really cool stuff. They have a bunch of celebrities that wear their products, and they have a bunch of videos which I assume are a great sort of foot in the door. They might also be used for retargeting. I can very well imagine that, but let's say those are the top of funnel things. They have dozens and dozens of YouTube videos that are currently live that I didn't even talk about here, because going through all of them and showing you this just takes way too much time. But maybe in one of the next videos I will go more into the push channel direction of YouTube and demand gen, etc. as well. Right? Then they have the middle of funnel, which is their bread and butter, I assume, to a certain degree. More specific keywords like iced out chains, Cuban link chains, etc., both on search and shopping. Then, of course, their competitors, Jackson, Crafted London, etc., etc. I'm sure they're making a whole bunch of sales from their competitors as well, just because they are well known enough that this works. If you're a tiny brand, typically you won't see the best results from competitor targeting, because they're like, okay, so the original one that I wanted to buy has like 50,000 Trustpilot reviews and great pricing and social proof and 2 million Instagram followers, etc. And now this other brand that positioned themselves as like an alternative is completely unknown, a bit shady, you know, this and that. But in their case, I'm sure it works very well. And then, of course, you have the final bottom of funnel, brand keywords, anything GLD related, which I assume in their account at least generates them many hundreds of thousands, if not a couple million of dollars in monthly revenue just from brand. Somewhere in that range, they will certainly, generate revenue from Google Ads specifically on their brand terms. And of course, this is just a super, super simplified list. What I can imagine is that they have a very powerful PMAX campaign sitting around somewhere with all kinds of assets, with all kinds of videos, text. I hope it's regularly being tweaked and tested. It's probably spending high 5, if not 6 figures in this one PMAX campaign alone per month, but that is in a very, very nutshell their funnel steps. And now I got the few final notes, like a summary of what I would do differently here on a very high level again. I would first of all use the BOGO and bundle offer for PMAX and YouTube as well. So remember, when I mentioned the ad library here, they have all kinds of things going on with this free, layer up with any 2 chains and get half your cart for free. And they have like, buy one, get one free. They have like put a bundle together of like 5 products and all these kind of things, which is great. And I would just recommend that they do something like that on YouTube as well. I didn't see a YouTube video on my very first research, at least, that talks about it. But this would be a perfect YouTube ad content piece, right? Because YouTube works best if you have specific bundles, if you have great offers, if you have no-brainer offers, etc. So if they don't have it, just if, I would certainly make a PMAX just around that. I would certainly make a PMAX like BOGO only or bundle only or something like that, and really try to push these offers, just because I know that in our case it worked so well. Then make sure that search is 100% relevant, fairly large offering, so having a perfect ad landing page fit is critical. That's what I said before, right? They have so many categories where you can, there are so many cases where you can send people to the perfect landing page. They even have like, intro stuff and so on and so forth. What I would probably also do is I would make sure that these header images here are completely tailored, right? So heat check, buy one, get one free. Maybe they tested that and it also makes a lot of sense. But I would either make this header a bit smaller, or I would, in this case, for example, make it completely focused and tailored towards bracelets, right? It's just like a nice little extra, and especially if you send tens or hundreds of thousands of people to your site per month from Google Search Ads, it's really worth optimizing this very top level stuff here, because everyone will see it, at least everyone that you send to a category page, of course. And then using separate product feeds at this volume level. Again, not an activity for very small brands, but if you are a brand like GLD with lots of things going on, with lots of traffic, lots of volume, and always leading with brand, it would at least be worth testing this separate variation that is called. So yeah, this was my audit of GLD and what you can see publicly of their ads. This was just my very first attempt. So if you want to see more, as I said, let me know in the comments which brand. Subscribe to this channel for more stuff and to not miss out on the next one as well. And also, as I mentioned, if you have an e-commerce brand and you're stuck with Google, you feel like you have tried everything, you want to scale to the next level, you hit the plateau that is so dreaded with Google Ads, make sure to check the link in the description to request our Ignite framework, where I give you 100% actionable advice for what you can do. And if you want us to implement it for you, then we can just discuss that. But I promise that you will get value out of this anyway. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Please leave a like, please subscribe for more. And with that being said, I look forward to see you in the next video again. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.